Hi guys, welcome to Radical Self-Belief, the Mojo Maker podcast and video series. We're in season 4 and I'm really excited as we go for the magic number of episode 166, all about trust, truth, and actually how do you come across to make genuine, profitable sales in whatever you do in life. And I've got a very special guest today on the show who originated from San Diego and is now talking to me from Sydney. So I'll loop back on our guest who is going to be Ari Galper from Trust-Based Selling, and he is the founder of Mindset Club as well. So before I go into that, I just want to remind you guys how valuable your comments have been lately in terms of directing the topics that are going to give you the most radical value, and also make sure that you hit the like and subscribe button on YouTube. That's really important for us to create real-time content and know that we're really making things that add value. Don't forget, you can find all the show notes from today's episode on nikkifogden-moore.com. Come hang out on YouTube, Twitter, and Instagram and Facebook and all those usual things. But most importantly, if you're on my Monday Mojo list, you get free tools and tips and heaps of extra added value, and my personal written musings on Mondays, which are usually spelling areas galore. But in the meantime, I think fundamentally at the moment, the reason I wanted to have our next guest on the show is because we're living in such an uncertain world where everything that was a blueprint for success actually is being taken away, and a whole new foundation of authentic living, self-sufficiency, and understanding your superpowers is even more important than before. And if you know me, you'll know that I'm absolutely obsessed with sustainable success, not peaks and troughs, not fake throughs, not highs and lows that drag you through the mud to get to one peak and then you fall down next and you feel like there's no one around you. We want great leaders in the driver's seat with good values, getting sustainability in all areas of life. So this next guest on today's episode 166 of Radical Self-Belief, the podcast, is none other than Ari Galper. Ari, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, and it's great to connect. I mean, it's always fantastic that we get with this technology to bring in great minds on shows like this. And one of the things we spoke about before we kicked off this recording was how can we add value for our listeners in both of our sides of the camp, and the shared mission, if you like, to build self-confidence and radical trust in self. And that by doing so, when you take care of your own side of the street, you build authentic connections with everyone else. So before we go into the how, what, and why, I think it'd be really fantastic. I always put my guests in the hot seat and just give us a 2-minute elevator pitch on who you are and what you do, and so we can get some background and the things that maybe no one would know about Ari Galper.
Sure. Well, you probably caught the accent. I'm originally from California. I grew up there, but I've been here now for 20 years in Sydney. I met my wife online on a dating site, pre-swiping, just image and text, and we emailed each other, and she was working in Los Angeles at the time, which we met in California. We dated there, then came to Australia to meet her family. We got married here, and then we moved back to Los Angeles to kind of start our life there. And then about 6 months later, a gift came into our lives. That's our son, Toby. And we were told after a couple of days after he was born that he had Down syndrome. And at first, we weren't sure what that meant to our lives. Then we realized we had a gift on our hands. If you know someone who has Down syndrome, you know they're beautiful people. They're loving, they're transparent, they have no hidden agenda. And I was so inspired by him. And I wrote a book about him called Lessons from Toby, how to be centered in your personal and business life. And he really inspired me to build out my whole trust-based selling approach 20 years ago, to really help people, teach them how to be more authentic, how to let go of the old conditioning, how to sell from the heart, and how to stop chasing what I call ghosts. People who say things like, I want to think about it, sounds great, call me next week. And now you're caught up in this dehumanizing process of chasing people. So I made it my mission to build a model and a system to help entrepreneurs sell with integrity without giving up their values. And that really is the core of my work. And I've been doing this for 20 years now, only this one thing only. And hopefully I'll share some ideas today that help everybody.
Yeah, and that is fantastic. So I'm so happy that our worlds have collided. We have such similar values and beliefs. One of the driving forces behind my business is ultimately I want the world's wealth to be managed by best value-led leaders. And in the past, all the good people would, buy the book, sell the Ferrari, and become a Buddhist monk. And that would mean that who's left running our corporations and our businesses and holding the world's wealth? Everybody that probably is cheating, grabbing, stealing, and doing deals in the background. So we're going to elevate everything up. And if you're listening to this, as always, I'd like to remind you, we don't do hope projects when you work with me. We would like you, and I know Ari will resonate with this, to think about how can this episode best help you? What are a couple of tips that you could walk away with and deploy immediately, rather than going, oh, that was so inspiring? Maybe take your phone out while you're listening to this, or grab a Post-it note, or come back and watch it later and on the YouTube channel, and start taking away some tips and tools that you can immediately do to shift your coordinates and your own success. And fundamentally, what I love about trust-based selling is the priority first, of course, Ari, is what you spoke about with your gorgeous son, Toby. I like an unfiltered approach. Now, that being enough, that essence that Toby has, because he's never thought of himself as any less than. So he is completely himself in the full entirety in this beautiful, unfiltered landscape. And unfortunately, most people grow up in a program system where they learn to have to get likes, whether it's via school or join a team or get accepted somewhere. So that radical self-acceptance is probably the first step in trust-based selling, is understanding that being yourself and being genuine in what you're exchanging in that transaction, whether it's for money, time, or whatever, has to be genuinely what you love to do.
I agree.
So when you started off with trust-based selling, how do people identify and step out of the washing machine of, selling training courses? Because people are taught to sell from a very young age. If you eat your vegetables, you can have dessert. If you do your homework, you can go and play outside later. If you do this, you can get a bike for Christmas. So there's always a quid pro quo. There's always a give take and a manipulation of communication. How do we get back to basics and sit down with a blank piece of paper and work out what our trust-based selling foundation is?
Well, first we have to detox from the old conditioning, the sleepwalking that we're still doing after all these years, unknowingly, unconsciously, that I'll be sharing today, that'll surprise a lot of people who think they're selling from the heart, doing the right thing, but they're still doing the old behaviors that are breaking the pattern. So the first idea is to shift your mindset away from the goal of the sale itself, to let go of your own objective so you can walk into someone else's world and be present with them, have a 360-degree view of their world, and really help them solve their problems. It's almost like a doctor-patient relationship. You're the doctor, they're the patient. They're not the possible customer, they're a patient. Your job is diagnose their problem and to build that trust with them where they feel you're the one for them. You know how when you meet someone at a party and you say to yourself, he just gets me. She just gets me. You know that feeling? That's what real trust is. Real trust is when someone else understands you better than you understand yourself. That's a layer we're going to here in our conversation today, is how do you break the surface level of conversation around relationships and rapport and nice to meet you, down to a real level of authenticity where the other person feels almost immediately you're the one.
Do you encounter when people start your course and your programs and your blueprint, Ari, that they realize that what they were selling or the product or service just doesn't resonate anymore? Because when you start to actually get off autopilot and become radically honest, there is a step where is what I want and are these goals real for me? So what happens if someone's confronted with the authenticity matrix where they're like, I don't know if I'm actually in love with this job anymore, and my values supersede the sales targets? Because this is what happens, and this is why a lot of people don't take this leap of faith, because they're afraid to open Pandora's box.
Well, the real vulnerability is when you're in an environment that doesn't support you to be yourself.
Yeah,
they're wanting you to be someone else, do certain behaviors that are they're inauthentic, they're not working. So you're kind of limited on your scope of change. The other vulnerability I find is people isn't the product that they're selling. It's their awareness of themselves, that they realize intuitively it doesn't feel right for them anymore. They don't like chasing ghosts. They don't like following up, yet they feel like they have to be successful. And that's the normal on our break today, is that mindset shift to realize No longer do you have to play that game anymore with people and chase them and play the numbers game, because that is no longer necessary if you know how to create deep trust with people at hello.
And do you think that fundamentally comes from, first of all, having a trust with yourself? Do you think that because of all the programming, this is what I believe, which is why I teach self-sufficiency, is that we are all so unique and part of a piece of the world's puzzle, and because everyone's trying to conform, we have soggy pieces of the puzzle. But when you really understand who you are and you can have a sense of trust in self no matter what the landscape, that is the solid foundation to come from. So
There's no doubt. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, how do people find out, how do people break through needing someone else's validation and permission to just go, I really believe in what I'm doing and I'm going to cut out the white noise because I'm on mission? In your course, how do people know that?
Well, the shift starts obviously with knowing yourself, knowing your value, and how you can help people. That is a given, hopefully. Of course, for some people, it takes time to get there. But once you arrive in your true value, the next step is jumping over into their world and saying the more you understand your clients' problems, the more you understand your market's issues, the more effectively you can walk into their world. If you only know about your solution and about what you do, and you have to now kind of pick and pluck apart what their issues are and not really understand them very well, you're going to struggle. So what I teach my clients is this: when you go into a conversation with someone for the first time, you need to know their issues in advance of the conversation. If you know your market, if it's narrow enough, you can probably know that. And what usually we do is we fish around. We say, how's it going? Nice to meet you. What problems do you have? And they're like, okay, they're authentic, or like it feels kind of awkward. So it used to be okay to fish for the problems, but now you have to know them in advance.
That's right. And let's just talk about that for a little bit. The other week, I sent out a flood relief support for business owners and founders that were supporting so many other people, but they were putting their heads in their hands. No one was supporting them. And I put out a free call. You can come in, I can chat and support those that are supporting others. And the responses that I got, that it was an upsell or that there was a hook, or people don't trust genuine free support or genuine questions anymore. So it's not just where you're coming from, it's understanding that people have got their barriers up because they think, well, what's this going to do? They're going to take my number and I'm going to get something later. So we're coming into a system that not only is how you turn up, but someone else isn't probably ready for that genuine. And you've got to be consistent with your behavior to prove that that is a genuine place you're coming from, because most people don't trust that you're being genuine. They don't know how.
Look, trust right now is its lowest level ever has been. Exactly. No doubt about that, which means trust is the new currency, 100%. Meaning you have to know how to convey that to someone in a conversation or an email or in marketing. So an instant connection, they go, she's the one. And I just trust her.
At the moment, a lot of discussion around people is AI. And so you can go online and you can get free copywriting and they pull from all your blogs. So the authenticity of content, the authenticity of sales copy, how do people cut through the clutter and bring Nikki, Ari, Tom, Max, Julie? It's getting your personal essence and being brave enough to have that shine through. How do you coach people to do that?
By intimately understanding your prospects and markets' issues and challenges. And I keep steering this conversation away from getting to know yourself.
Yeah.
That's kind of where we like to start, to moving into understanding the other person you're speaking with, because that's the gulf, that's the hole we have, because we love talking about ourselves. Oh, I've just got this program, it's 4 steps, it's this, and they're like, they don't really care about your program. What they care about is this question.
Great.
Are you the one to solve my problem? They don't care how you solve it. All they care is if you're the one. If that is true, then no longer should you rely on your solution as your credibility. Rely on how well you understand them.
And that is actually a really great segue to self-leadership, right? So when you can be sure in yourself, you have enough room and capacity to sit down and do the background work to genuinely see how you can help other people. And that's the next step. So you've taken what a lot of people are going through with a woke society, self-awareness, everything else, to then transferring that to understanding that if you genuinely have a service that people need, you need to be able to be there for them and understand their critical pain points and what their challenges are and be in the trenches with them. So it is not about you, it's about how you can help that other person, how you can help that other company.
You need to get out of the way of yourself.
Exactly.
It's not about you. You need self-esteem, go see a therapist. If you want to go help your customer or client, be the doctor, they're the patient, diagnose their problem with an x-ray, metaphorically, and really help them understand that you understand them at a deep level more than anyone else. That's why you craft the code on this.
Do you believe that people's own experience in zero to hero become the strongest selling points because you've been in that position yourself, so you can have empathy and understanding with the people that you're then going to provide that service for? Because getting to know those people means researching their pain points, understanding what their challenges are, putting yourself in their shoes. Do you think the greatest salespeople and the greatest achievers are because they've had to walk that path themselves first, so they have firsthand experience?
Well, even if you don't experience it yourself, at least think about what are the 2 or 3 or 4 core issues that went away when you help someone solve their problem. What are the core issues that you can help people solve? Once you have that, then you can do what I call taking down the iceberg. Iceberg means, see, normally in a chat with someone, they give you what I call service level problems. They say, oh yeah, I've got any new clients, I'm struggling with this. And then we qualify them. And then our instinct is, great, I can help them. I know I can. And we go right into our solution. Or we start educating, what I call free consulting. We start educating, doing free consulting, and the whole thing shifts over to you. Instead, if you just know what the core problems are from the beginning, you can ask certain questions to go below the iceberg. For instance, let's say someone says, I don't know, what's a classic example of a problem one of your clients might have?
I would say just completely overwhelmed. So
okay, so they say to you, Nikki, my biggest problem is I'm overwhelmed. Okay, this could be any problem.
Could be anything.
Here's what you say next. You say, can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah. But that's the point. We've gone from a society which is exhibitionism, look at me, projection, fame, vanity numbers, to getting in a seat where you're interested in other people. And that is what is building relationships. And that is what is building trust, because it's genuine interest, right? You're giving someone a space to answer your questions. So
you've got to let go of your own agenda.
Exactly. And that letting go of the outcome. So I always call that the pizza order. You know what your targets are, you know what your goals are, but then you've got to allow room for people to step in and actually tell you how they best need help and what's going on instead of filling the gaps. And so
exactly.
That's what your iceberg situation is. Instead of filling the gaps for people, keep listening. And I think as a society, we've forgotten how to listen because we're listening to reply instead of to understand.
It's because we've been conditioned to have a next step in our process all the time.
100%.
What's next? Where do they go next? I got to move next. See, we're so teed up and so anxious about it that we fill the gaps of silence. Yes, silence is what trust is about. Let them to step into it versus you step into it. I'm sure if I had the recordings of some of your listeners' calls right now and they're talking to people, I hear them doing a lot of talking, a lot of filling in the gaps, educating, enthusiasm, everything, quote, salespeople do without even knowing it.
Yeah, well, I mean, sorry, I didn't understand that last comment, but I would say that I think what we've come from is a place where we are shifting, which is why this information is really good, which is why people are hungry to learn things differently, which is why they're open and interested to go, I understand that doesn't work anymore, but show me how in a way that's relevant to me. So once you've done these steps and you are going into genuine trust-based selling, which is what you're doing, how do you keep your own, and you just jumped into a segue there, which is people's teams. So you might have harnessed that as a head of sales or a CEO or someone that has that culture, but then you've got to take that possibility and that training and that mindset through all your teams and make sure that people are in flow and they're not forcing an outcome. And that,
well, you got to walk the talk. It's what you have to do.
So that's,
let me give you an example. Let's do a real example right now of what I mean by trust-based selling. So people kind of take it from this abstract concept to a real tactical idea to use. Okay, let's say you're on the phone with someone for the first time, a potential client, a prospect. First conversation, call is going well, good opportunity, there's chemistry there, call kind of comes to an end, it feels good. Typically, what do we say at the end of a call like that? We say things like, how about we get together, move forward, have a cup of coffee, meet again. Our instinct is to move things forward. But what happens if you attempt to move things forward and they aren't ready yet? What do you break with them so early in the process?
Well, you break their trust and connection.
Exactly. So same scenario, our mindset and our approach. Call is going well, good chemistry, good opportunity, call comes to an end, rather than saying, hey, how about we move forward? What we say instead is this. What we say is, where do you think we should go from here?
So you're talking about in your fundamental programs, you're always handing the reciprocity and the moves back to the person that you're working with rather than forcing, which is allowing room for them to guide the direction and feel comfortable. And that is building a bridge rather than putting the pole out, which is two separate sales techniques, right? So you can take Ari's trust method and you can apply this to anything. You can apply it to friendships, to relationships. And I want you guys to listen, and why this is such a dynamic conversation is because you're probably listening to this going, yeah, but the point is building a bridge together and allowing approach for reciprocity and the other person to have time to consider what feels right to them. And I think that's important too.
I think creating space is hard for people.
Well,
because we feel obligated to fill the space with noise. Because we feel uncomfortable with the space. But when you create space with someone you just met in a trust-based way, they'll enter it and engage with you in a way that's magical. It's so comfortable. And when you say to somebody, where do you think we should go from here? They're usually in a state of shock. 100%. They can't believe somebody would ask them what they want to do. It's so unusual and so wonderful. And when you begin to realize and you change your language and your framework around this, selling is easy if you don't use the old definition of it.
So what I did before our podcast is I reached out to my inner circle and I said, I've got you coming on the show and I like a little bit of an antagonistic discussion. We want to get people out of their seats and start listening and go, whoa, there's a discussion going on here. This isn't a nice feel-good Pat the Labrador chat. This is about shaking things up a little bit. So a couple of questions from my tribe. So sure. Ari, you talk about trust selling. The word selling for me is something I'm already uncomfortable with. And that is actually from Mary, and she's an entrepreneur and she's growing her business. And she says her biggest thing is feeling uncomfortable with the word selling and sales. That's been her roadblock.
Yeah, because the definition as she knows it ties to the goal of making the sale. Mm-hmm. That's where the pressure is. That's where all the angst comes from trying to make the sale. But if you redefine that definition, and it's not about the sale anymore, it's about how good you are trust building with the other person, and you detach from that, then you no longer are part of that old way of thinking, and there's no longer anxiety, because you're right. We carry what we call sales armor on every day. Yeah. A mechanism to protect ourselves from the bullets coming our way. We tear ourselves up, we get energy, we're ready for the fight. We have to go out there and make that sale. It's the whole hunter attitude that we've been taught over the years. People don't want to be sold that way anymore, especially now with the way the world's changed. And if you can enter the conversation at hello, from a trust perspective, the idea of selling becomes enjoyable and pleasurable, and the pain goes away.
And can I take that one step further? I call it a mutual exchange. So if we took money out, and we went right back to, we had plots of land and you were growing one thing and I was growing another, and you're a community. To me, this is really what we do, which is why I always tell people there is enough for everyone, and there are enough dentists and coaches and authors, and there is never lack, because we all have a mutual exchange. There is a beautiful synergy between what I can do and what you need, whether that is a product, a service, an idea, or logistics. So if we go back to the originality of community, of bartering, of genuine exchange, it's just when this old adage of selling, achievement, awards, recognition, and getting those dollars at any cost has broken down the foundation of what I call mutual natural exchange, which is, you have a problem, I can come and solve it. That is fantastic. It's a mutually beneficial working relationship, and it is fantastic, because then you have legacy clients, because you're there for the right reasons, and they are long-term great clients. And that's the other thing on the selling. I just want to bring one more of those questions in. Mark says, in my sales training, we were taught about sell, volume. And he is misaligned with that now, because he doesn't have time to build customer relationships. So he said he'd rather have less customers and better relationships. So he's left his sales job because of the way the company was making him sell. Volume.
That goes to the myth of the numbers game.
Exactly.
The concept that the more contacts you make, the more sales you're supposed to make. Well, like we discovered as well, it's not about how many contacts you make anymore. It's about how deep you go on each conversation. And that's the shift you've got to make, to let go of that old sort of weight you're carrying, to think it's all about the numbers, which is not. It's about how good you are at trust building.
And you spoke about myth busting in the beginning of this. You said you want to bust some myths on selling. So that would be one of them. Talk to me about another myth that you want to bust with trust-based selling.
Sure. There's the classic one, which is that we believe the sale is lost at the end of the process. I'm sure you had a deal pending and looked really good. It fell through at the end. You're like, what happened? Well, we discovered the sale is not lost anymore at the end. It's now lost at the beginning, at hello. And just for fun, I'll show it to you. If someone calls you tomorrow morning on your phone, you pick it up and you hear, hi, my name is, I'm with, we are a, what goes through your mind in about 3 seconds?
Well, I usually hang up.
Exactly. It's over at hello. So I'm not suggesting your folks are cold calling, but I will make the case that they're losing their opportunities at the beginning and not the end, because trust wasn't built from the beginning.
And how do, obviously there are merits, there's large organizations, but my audience, I would say, are integrity-based listeners. So they don't want to be like everybody else. They're interested in this conversation. They are interested in value-based professionalism and living. If you are shifting this, what is the two fundamental things that people can do immediately to change the conversation around their sales, whether it's an online ad or it's a conversation? Where are the two things people should start with?
The fastest way to get results from this is to change your languaging to trust-based languaging. Let me give you an example right now. I'm going to ask all your viewers and listeners to take an oath with me to remove one phrase forever as of today, never use it ever again in their languaging around selling. Here it is. Never again use the phrase follow up ever again.
We're deleting that from all sales. If you're listening to this, write that on a red Post-it note. No more follow-up as a phrase. Eradicate.
And that's hard for people. That's so hard because they always call and say, hi, I'm calling to follow up. Email, I'm writing to follow up. That's 1980s languaging. I'm calling to move things forward towards a sale, you see? We're so stuck in that. Even things like checking in, touching base. It's like, here's what you say instead. You say,
replace it with.
Here it is. I'm giving you a call to see if you have any feedback on our previous conversation, any feedback on our last meeting, any feedback on our proposal. Feedback's going backwards, not towards the sale. It's going the opposite direction. That removes the pressure, and then they start opening up to you and they tell you the truth. Exactly. That one small switch alone will blow people away. Like, oh my God, they won't stop talking. This guy was right. Just that alone, try that. There's one more I'll give you right now, and that is the word, would you be interested? That's a classic sales thing. Instead, say this, would you be open? Open to the idea of, open doesn't force them into a yes or a no. Open creates a new space to allow them to engage with you peacefully without you feeling that, like they're enroading you into a yes or no. Just those small tweaks alone will be massive on your email and your phone conversations.
I think these things are about an emotional maturity too. Is I always talk about we're in a 2022 with a 1960s hard drive. Just like any computer, we need to update our operating system. What doesn't serve you anymore needs to be deleted, and you need to create space for the right thing. So don't be in a hurry to rush off and fill the gaps without doing your foundation. So if you're listening to this podcast today, you're watching the video and you're having a bit of a giggle to yourself, I recommend you actually dive a bit deeper and go and look at Ari's website, go and get the book or do some work, because if this resonates, it means it's for you, and there's probably some gold hidden in that can free you from forcing yourself through work into what I call complete flow or zero gravity, which is when you are naturally showing up with interest, intent, and relevance. And when you're yourself, you can't lose because you're not trying to put a mask on and be anything else. And when you can listen, that I think is magic. That's the one thing that I love with my clients. I mean, I don't have a team that cold calls to coach with me. It's a totally different system. And I only do 10 to 12 private coaching clients a year. So it's kind of, there's a few, people appear when they need it. But in terms of other elements like the courses and things, I'm always asking, how can I do better? Was that relevant? Was it too much? Because ultimately, I want to create radical results. And that is what is going to be the best way for people to hear it, read it, see it. Do the downloads work? That's the stuff I'm asking my clients about. And that genuine trust that you build is about a database of true connections where you know them intimately. And it's no use having a database of 100,000 people in your opt-ins if they're not genuinely interested. I think we've got to get rid of vanity numbers. Do you have a comment on getting brave enough to go for quality instead of quantity?
Look, where things are going is lower volume, higher price point, higher margin businesses versus high volume, low margin where you struggle. The more you can realize you need less of a pipeline and less potential clients, if you can increase your fees, master your trust level. You'd be surprised how many people spend more money with someone they can trust and less money with someone they can't trust.
Well, that makes sense to me. That makes complete sense to me, though.
And I tell my clients who work with me that I'm setting a goal for you. Your goal is 100% conversion of every potential qualified client you have to talk to. If you can't get all of them, you're the problem, not them, because they're already qualified. You messed it up. And all my clients get 100% once they work with me for long enough because they finally realize they got to fix themselves first.
Yeah, and that's kind of fundamentally why I started with, you live and breathe this world every day. This is the first time on this show people are getting to see you and hear about this topic. So, that I fundamentally want to take back to not in a narcissistic way, but you have to be responsible for yourself. You have to be able to be radically accountable. And I always say it's 3 fingers pointing back. So if you're going to say that didn't work out, that's a greatest gift to go, what can I do better? Because the right people, what is meant for you doesn't pass you by, but we have to be radically accountable. And that's growth, that is opportunity, those are possibilities, and they're nothing to be ashamed of. That's actually where you build your best product, is by asking questions, asking for feedback. And what I loved about your comment there, you said 100% conversion, that's fantastic. But I want to encourage people to know why and who they want to work with their product first. Get really honest with what you're selling, even if it's a widget. I think that's the problem, is that people have too big a catalog, or they diversify, or they have too many options. And so it makes it really hard in a cluttered market for people to know, well, how am I going to buy from you? Or what are you solving? Because confused already at the first conversation. So back to quality versus quantity, how do people declutter their catalog? And would that go to feedback going, what are the products that you sell time and time again that naturally fit the needs of your customers? And are you willing to get rid of the ones that are in the periphery?
Yeah, culling is definitely key. And the other key is starting from the point of their problems. What are the top 5 core problems that the highest paying clients you can help them solve?
Yeah.
And then back into your product line from that, not the reverse.
Yeah, and I think because we've had a world generated by volume-led sales with revenue, and now we're getting value-led sales, good values, proper relationships, proper quality product, we're getting good people who are starting to earn more money, and they're not used to their relationship with money because their old program of selling has also meant car salesman. Selling itself has had a dirty word attached to it, right? So we're reprogramming the word selling. We're reprogramming abundance, that good people, you are allowed to be a super nice person and do well. It is not a co-requisite, or you can't have one or the other. So it's coming to terms with the fact that you don't have to sell yourself out to do well. Could you just touch on that mindset that you go through with your clients that don't feel bad for doing well?
Yeah, so it's interesting because I encourage my clients to raise their fees as high as possible. And they said to me, Ari, but that's not fair. That's not fair to charge them more than someone else. I say that's a way of sidestepping your real value and what you're worth. Because you're worth what someone's willing to pay you. And I want you to incrementally charge, adding another 0 to your offer and keep going until you hit your peak. I started
with that.
Go ahead.
How do you help people figuring out what that price is? Because your price and their price is conditioning. And that's
well, we leave money on the table and don't even know it. Yeah. We're afraid to increase our fees because we're afraid that we're being greedy. All these old terms that flow into our mind, and I'm like, how do you think people become successful? They're only going to pay you if the value's there. But you better position yourself as what I call a trust authority in your market if you want to make the most opportunity and get the best clients, because the higher fees equals better quality clients. Lower fees equals lower quality clients. It's just the way it works. I had one guy approach me recently and said, Ari, I want to work with you. I said, why? He says, because you're the world's authority on trust-based selling. I said, no other reason. And that's it. I want the best person to work with on this problem. And that was it. People who are the best clients want to work with the best.
And going back to your son as well, Toby, this beautiful unfiltered approach and the confidence that you have and the programs you've created, I find in what we do, we exude this because we practice what we preach. So to translate that 25 years of experience for someone listening to this for the first time, and it could just be that little nudge they needed, where I think we're going to put some information on your book and your programs out there, and I think we'll do a bit of a giveaway. I feel like this will really help. I'll get some books and we'll do a giveaway. So if you leave some comments and you put your hand up on the YouTube channel, please leave a comment and we'll do some giveaways of Ari's books. I'll sort that out with him later. But the one fundamental question I want to loop back on is deservedness. So unraveling those old constellations. You mentioned before, if you don't have self-worth, go and see a therapist. But I feel like sometimes doing this work with coaches like you and I, it is a little bit of therapy at the same time, because you have to identify the subconscious programming.
Oh yeah, I call it sales therapy all the time. I mean,
exactly. So I like to have this term, your ego is not your amigo. And I talk about thought tinder to streamline neuroplasticity. That if there's a subconscious thought, which is, oh shit, I'm charging too much, swipe that left, because it's going to come up all the time, and then choose the next right thought, which is, I'm committed for the next 90 days of trialing out these rates. And then you don't budge on those rates till you get that confidence.
Look, this comes down to courage.
Exactly.
This comes down to being bold. This comes down to stepping up beyond your comfort zone and reaching out to what's yours and what you deserve. And if you're open to doing that, then we can help you solve that problem, between you and I.
100%. And that, guys, is, I think I've got one last tribe question for you, Ari, because I really wanted to make sure that anyone listening to this, that, I understood how they could get the most out of it, a bit like trust selling, actually, without realizing it. But it is my job to provide radical value for listeners. We're taking up 20-something minutes of their time, and I want them to walk away going, fuck me, that was just what I need to hear. So one of the things is, you're a expert, best-selling author, coach, everything. What is your biggest challenge?
Right now, I'm working on replicating me. I'm working on sustaining my business forever beyond me. Once I'm not in this world, this will live on beyond me. And how do you do that as a coach? It's really not that easy, because it's not a normal business. So I've got 4 or 5 coaches, well, mini RAs I'm now coaching and replicating myself into a system where they can now do what I do, so I can do other things as well. That's what my biggest goals are for this year, is replace my income with other people delivering what I do, which I will do.
And I think that's fabulous. I also think that's taking that IP and extending that reach, which is, kind of what we do with the academy, is train the trainer, but also having a criteria. How do you manage quality control with your trainers? You're starting with a small group, because we have a lot of people that start. Coaching is a big word. It's like the diet industry. Suddenly everybody's a life coach, a business coach, a sales coach. I mean, that's why I've avoided calling myself a coach, because I'm allergic to the word. In many ways, because you can't just walk out of a job and suddenly become a coach if you don't understand the responsibility you have for other people's lives. How do you, at your company, create value and quality control when you've got people deploying your work and IP? Because I know a lot of people will be listening to this going, well, I want to do the same. Let's call it your legacy hires. What are the ways that you bring them into your values and you check that they can deliver that time and time again?
Well, I've chosen people who've been in my orbit for a long, long time. People who understand what I do, live it, use it, and walk and talk it. I'm not converting the cold to the warm here.
Perfect.
I'm bringing people who understand what I do, and I'm building a roadmap out, a process map that maps out exactly the roadmap for them to follow to achieve the goal. I've recorded all my calls for the last 20 years, hours and hours of coaching, consulting calls. I've taken those calls, broken them down, the essence of it, and identified what the process was that I do unconsciously. And I'm coaching them on that process to follow with guardrails. And it is working incredibly well. They are so excited. They're already trying things. They're so hungry for more. And because they see a path.
Yeah. And once one thing, your mantra, if you like, I always ask my guests, if you had one mantra that you live by personally, what would that be? Just an Ari mantra that you tell yourself every morning that's just your rules of life.
Stop selling, build trust instead.
Stop selling, build trust instead. And thank you so much, Ari. I think we've got one challenge left. So if you want to go and check out trust-based selling, Ari Galper, you can find him on Ari Galper's all over the internet. If you have just listened to this and you don't even know where to go for the show notes right now, you can just Google Ari Galper, that is ARIGALPER, and he'll pop up there left, right, and center with business blueprints, mindset club, and trust-based selling. And I know I'm going to twist his arm and we'll get a few books to give away as well. I like discussions that shake up your old thinking, but remember, do not be too quick to fill the gaps. Allow space to consider your core fundamentals of trust-based selling, which is, why are you doing this? What do your customers really need? And if you allow time for them to actually tell you, then you've created the biggest thing of all in this human race, is we need significance. Because if you keep forcing your way on people and you're not giving people significance, which is why I loved your personal story in the beginning about Toby, is that people just need to be seen and they need to be heard, even more in this world than ever before. So if it's the two things you can do, whatever business you're in, is make your customers feel seen and heard and significant, then as far as I'm concerned, you're already one strong step up on creating a work-life blend that you will also love. Because I love the relationships that I have with my customers. I get just as much back. that's like family to me. And if you're in a position where that job that you have as an extension is who you are, then I would say go and check out Ari Galper's trust-based selling methods, the blueprints for doing this, for building your business, for learning about stepping out of your old programming, rebooting your selling hard drive with better language, no more follow-ups. Ask if people are open to things, and make sure that you keep room for the dialogue to be open, because you never know what you can learn from someone else. So Ari, I've just had so much fun having a great discussion with you on the show. It's obvious that you're extremely passionate about putting people in the driver's seat to being the best salespeople with genuine, authentic trust and resonant products and services for sustainable success. So really core foundations for anything that we do here. Is there anything you would like to end on, or a takeaway? If there's one thing you want people to walk off this podcast, leave this video, drop the mic, and do next, what would that be?
I'd probably say that there's no lack of opportunity out there. That is not the issue.
Yeah.
There's so much opportunity. As long as you're willing to be open to growing and letting go of what you're holding on to and becoming a better person. And I got that same message from, you see back here, Richard Branson told me the same thing. You got to let go of what you're holding on to be able to evolve. If you're just going to hold on to what you're doing, you'll always stay the same.
100%. So Ari Galper from Trust-Based Selling, ex-San Diego, now living a long time in Sydney with his family. We've converted him to the Aussie lifestyle. I love San Diego, by the way. Thank you for coming in and spreading some of that positive and practical advice on how you can step out of the old hard drive of selling and actually get back into trust-based business where everything's going to flow beautifully. Even if you have to translate this to your staff, you'll be leading by example. I'm Nikki Fogden-Moore, the host of Radical Self-Belief, the Mojo Maker podcast. We're over on YouTube as well with these videos, and you can come check out the show notes for episode 166 on nikkifogdenmoore.com. As always, this is the trifecta of being healthy, wealthy, and wise. Life has no remote. You must get up and change it yourself, and you are just as magic as everybody else that you're inspired by. So it's time to take the reins back and do something about that. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Ari Galper, thank you once again for being a distinguished guest, very passionate on this show, and we hope we've inspired you to take some change and create a new blueprint for what you're going to do next. Thanks so much for tuning in. Like and subscribe on YouTube, and also we'd love to have you come over and subscribe to Radical Self-Belief, the podcast. We hope you've reignited your vision and showing you how to harness your effortless energy to be the CEO of your business as well as your life.